Hi everybody, welcome to the last video in the series of motorcycle painting that I'm doing. So we've been through the various stages and I'll link all the videos up so that people can see the various stages that we've gone through. So this is the final stage, which is the base coat and the top coat. So as a base coat, I'm using cellulose paint, which some people regard as easier to spray than a base coat or a colour coat, anything to give you colour. People regard it as easier to spray. I can't really tell any difference whether it's easier to spray or not. It doesn't seem easier to spray, it doesn't seem harder to spray. But the reason I'm doing it in cellulose is that I was trying, from the outset of this, I was trying to keep the cost of the equipment down to a bare minimum, really. So, you know, I allowed myself a little bit of indulgence with the primer gun, which is you know, like £105 primer gun, so which is about $125, $130 at the moment to you guys in the States. So the FLG5, which is the SBK, is it SBK? I think in the US. So that was more expensive than anything else I've used on this, because we use really basic tools to try and get the dents out. We used yeah, I mean, we haven't spent much money on it at all, really. So for the last coat, or last two coats, the base coat and the top coat, I'm using the GF3, which is the ANI gun, which is a really good little gun, and it's about 27 GV pounds, so about $35 US. So it's not a copy of anything, it is a genuine gun, and it's been really good. I bought it, if you see my unboxing and other videos, I bought it for the pot, but because the pot is the same as the ANI R150, so you get the gun for virtually nothing, and it's a really good little gun for the money, really good little gun. So back to the painting anyway. So with the cellulose paint, we're just going to put, I'm going to put the cellulose on it, and then you'll be able to see what the finish is like with just cellulose, because cellulose is an older paint. They used to use it on old cars years ago, before they developed the sort of base coat and 2K clear coat that they use on modern cars and bikes and things like that. So as I was saying at the start, before I waffle off, that it's regarded in the UK and most of Europe really as a safer way of spraying, because it can be your top coat as well, so it gives a glossish finish, so it, you know, it still looks like a glossy paint job. I mean, it's not the same as 2K, I wouldn't for 1 minute say it was, but it gives you a glossy paint job, and it negates the need for all the safety equipment that you should really have when using 2K. You know, the air-fed mask and various extractors and things like that to get rid of the fumes quickly. So, I mean, I'm quite well kitted out. I do have an air-fed mask and things like that, but I appreciate a lot of people don't. And that's the reason for doing this on the cheap, so to speak, just to see what kind of finish you'll get with a cheap gun, easily usable paints and easily usable lacquers. So the idea of this one is that I'm going to give it a good few coats of cellulose, just so that it can build up, you know, a few layers there. And then if you want to get to your cellulose stage and you want to flat it and polish it, because cellulose covers, sorry, I'll start again. Cellulose polishes up quite well, but it obviously it all takes time, doesn't it, to polish something. Whereas with 2K, often off the gun you'll get a good enough finish, unless you're, you know, doing show bikes or cars or whatever. So with cellulose, you can get a good finish, but you do have to polish it. I'll just stop what I'm saying at the moment, because you'll see here that I'm just rubbing something down. I'm using a 600 grit, yeah, 600 grit wet and dry paper. Unfortunately, it's just out of the camera shot which obviously it's on my head, so I couldn't see it at the time, and I thought the camera was getting it. But you can see towards the end the patch that I've done, and it was where I've got too close with the gun, because you're turning the tank, or I'm turning the tank, and you're moving the gun up and down, up and down. Obviously, I just turned the tank to a position where it was too close to the gun. So what you do is you don't get runs as such, you get sort of like wavy lines. So it's like a C effect, you know, with 3 or 4 or 5 little waves of paint. Now, if it was the first coat, you'll get away with it, because as you put a few more coats on, it covers it up. But if you're getting nearer the final coats, it doesn't cover it up. So the best thing to do is just stop, let the paint dry. You'll see there, you see that dull area there, and literally all I do is just I've panel wiped it so that there's no dust about. You're just blowing anything finally off it. I've tack clothed it, and then you just put a little bit on there, and you're back to where you were before. So there's no need to panic in situations like that, because you've got a gun full of the right paint. It's a dead match for what you're doing, and as long as you've got time just to let it dry. In the case of cellulose, the temperature today was about, I think it's about 17 degrees Celsius, which is about 60 Fahrenheit, is it? Something like that. So it's not cold, but it's certainly not warm either. Ideally, you would want it warmer, really. About 25 degrees Celsius, which is about, what, 75, I think, in Fahrenheit, is ideal conditions to paint. So I was using a heat gun sometimes, just to put a bit of heat into the tank, so that the paint would dry quicker, so that you can apply it thicker and not get so many runs. But yeah, as I was saying, I just putting as many coats on as I can, and then that does give you the ability to sand it down, to flatten it, and to polish to your heart's content. And then you can clear coat with cellulose. You can clear coat it if you want to with a 2K clear or a 1K. Now, in the case of this, when I actually get to the clear coat stage, which is, I think this is the final, or one of the final coats of cellulose paint, I use a 1K. And again, the reason for using the 1K, sorry, the reason for using the 1K is just so that, you know, it's they call it 1K acrylic, although a lot of the 2K top coats are acrylic as well, but they call it a 1K acrylic top coat, and it's easier to use. You don't have to mix anything for a start. You just literally pour it. You should always pour it through a filter, but pour it through a filter into your cup on your spray gun, and you're away. But it's not as hard wearing as a 2K clear, and it is not as glossy. What I've done is at the end of this video, I've put some photos, because I'm narrating this afterwards. I've put some photos of the finished tank outside, so that you can just see the kind of gloss level when it's dulled back, because the photos were taken about 9 days after the tank was sprayed. I left it in the sun for a couple of days, and brought it in to the workshop overnight, and put it back out in the sun for a couple of days. So what you'll see at the end of this is the worst it would ever be, and that's with the lacquer on it. So going back to what I was saying before, this is the cellulose paint job, and that's the final coat of cellulose. So what you see there is what you would end up with, I think, anyway. As I say, I'm narrating it afterwards, so I think that's it. Yeah, that is what you will end up with if you just do a cellulose paint job on a tank, and then you can flatten that and polish that to your heart's content. Just here, you see I'm putting some decals on. Now with the decals, I've only got two round Yamaha decals there to go on the tank, and I haven't got to match nothing. It's purely for the channel, this tank, so I didn't need to match anything or be anything. It's just, I thought I'd put some decals on there so that you can see you know, what I'm doing really, and just to give it a little bit of a different to just a complete one paint finish, I guess. So I'm putting these on. You'll see I'm putting them on sticky. Now, what you would normally do, or what you'd often do, is put them on wet. So you would, although they're sticky decals, you put them on wet. You peel the backing off, as I've done before, and then you would spray a solution of water with a very, very small amount of, we call it washing up liquid in the UK, but what you used for washing pots and pans up. And then you can slide it in position, but you have to be really careful if you've got fresh paint, because you don't want to mark that paint. So I didn't do that in this case, but it is something you can do. And you'll see here, I'm just putting the first of the top coats on, and I'm just putting, I actually cut them out because you have to put some on, wait 5 minutes, put a bit more on, and I did it 3 times before I actually did started spraying the complete tank with top coat. And that's just to if the vinyl on the transfers is going to react, it just helps stop it doing that. Always, if you're gonna, same as if you're painting a tank that's got old paint on it, always do it very lightly to start with, and that will allow it to dry and not react. And then as you put the the further coats over the top, there's much less chance of it reacting. So the solvent doesn't eat into it effectively and start making it bubble up and crisp up. So we're doing our first top coat now, and as with most top coats, you don't put a full coat on to start with. On this, I think I put about 4 coats altogether of top coat, and again, that's to allow for flattening if you want to flat it, and remove any orange peel that's there, and polish. So it gives you a good foundation, I suppose, is the best way of putting it, to be able to flatten polish, so that if you want that tank really, really polished up, then you can do. And I haven't gone through the polishing stage, etc., simply because you can do it to any degree really. You could spend 5 minutes making it look better, or you could spend 4 hours flattening and polishing it. So you can get as good a look off of a 1K as a 2K. The difference being that I say that, probably not quite as good as a 2K, but it can look really, really good. The difference being is it's not as hard wearing. So it's being a fuel tank, if you spill a bit of fuel on it, it normally is okay. With this particular top coat I'm using here, I've used that before, and I've used it on wheels and things that you get oil and sometimes petrol and petrol-based products on it, and it does resist quite well. And on petrol tanks, it resists quite well. If you're doing it all the time, every time you fill up, you spill a load over the top, it's not gonna last too long. But it lasts long enough, I think. And what we're after here is getting a job that's not too expensive. Somebody can do it at home with just a good quality spraying mask, without the need for air-fed stuff, a cheap spray gun, and an easy to use product. So that's the idea of doing the whole thing. And I think you'll find it's I think it's come out quite well, considering the restrictions that were placed upon us. Could you do it better? Yes, you could. You could do it better with 2K clear, and a real top quality 2K clear would give you a slightly better finish. But then we're going into the realms of in that case you'd want a better spray gun, and in that case you'd want top quality base coat and things like that, and you just start to get into a different world. And I think this channel and its I'll say readers, then its viewers are more at the beginning stage than the advanced stage, because that's effectively where I am really. I'm not a professional painter, but I do enjoy my painting. I've been painting a fair bit of time. So I I do know a bit of what I'm talking about, although I wouldn't claim to know everything. So anyway, that just about clears it up. And these are the shots, as I say, these are about 9 days afterwards with no polishing, no touching the tank whatsoever. I literally just put a piece of plastic over it, put it in the sun for a day, took it out, put it in the sun for a day, and brought it back in. And that's the finish you leave. So you could polish that up to your heart's content. All right, thanks very much. Bye-bye.